Morning, everyone. Morning. My name is Grace Ho, and I'm the president of the Woods Fund of Chicago. I've been there for just about a year, and prior to that, I was at the Illinois Department of Human Services for 8.5 years. But I began my career early on working on immigrant and refugee rights. First at the Chinese American Service League, and Bernie's here, then that Chinese Mutual Aid Association, where we did a lot of work around the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which thankfully is no longer in existence. And then also prior to that on the negative provisions on immigrants around the 1996 welfare reform law. And so, you know, when we were fighting for state funding for immigrant refugee services, for welfare reform, for provisions to come back and support immigrants and refugees, it was about respect and fairness. And I think that it continues to be an issue of respect and fairness for immigrants and refugees. And I think it's important to say, and I say that from the standpoint of working for a foundation that funds only organizing and only advocacy to produce systemic change, is that we are in the moment that we are right now because of the collective, accumulative effect of organizing and the consistent evolution and growth of the immigrant and refugee movement. It has been a battle day after day, year after year, decade after decade to bring us where we are today. A lot of people say, well, look at November. November was, you know, the key moment for the movement, but it's really been because of work of women like Rosa in communities and other folks who have walked next to her, behind her, in front of her, a lot of women in the movement who've brought us to where we are today, not just an election. So as I look around the room, I'm so excited to see the faces of women I've worked with throughout the years who have been stalwarts on immigrant issues over the decades. And I'm also inspired to see new female and male friends who are leaders and agitators on other issues and now are here today to learn with us about where we are in the movement today. And so I'm here to share with you where we are from a legislative standpoint. And so the big headline is Senate Immigration Bill 744 is a good start. As Sujata said, the markup started yesterday, but I think the important thing for all of us to know is that there is a ton more that needs to happen. It seems to be, from my vantage point, a solid but very fragile time. And so here are the details. So what's in the bill? On April 18th, 2013, a bipartisan group of 8 U.S. senators, including our senator, Illinois Senator Richard Durbin, introduced the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act. This 844-page bill includes a path to citizenship for many undocumented immigrants like Rosa, as well as several other major changes to our system. So the path to citizenship is that undocumented immigrants who are in the United States before December 31st of 2011 could start a 4-step process that will lead to U.S. citizenship. They would first apply for what is called Registered Provisional Immigrant Status, which is the acronym is RPI, which would allow them to live and work in the United States for 6 years. After 10 years of RPI status, they could then apply for green cards if they pay another $1,000 fine, pass a background check, meet further work and educational requirements, and pass an English and civics test. Immigrants on this track would then qualify for citizenship after 3 years of green card status. The Department of Homeland Security cannot even start this RPI status or start issuing green cards until it meets certain triggers regarding border security and enforcement. There are 2 highlights that I would like to bring to the fore that are included in this bill as well, and one is the DREAM Act. I think many of us have been inspired and have been following very closely the youths who have been working for the passage of DREAM Act on the national level. So immigrants who came to the United States before turning 16 and who got a GED or a high school diploma can get green cards after 5 years of RPI status. They would need to finish 2 years of college or 4 years of military service and pass a background check, an English, and a civics test. Once they get a green card, then they can apply for citizenship immediately. So the DREAM Act, the Dreamers, have a fast track towards citizenship. As it relates to family visas, the bill would move the family backlogs faster and keep families in the backlog together while they are waiting. However, U.S. citizens would no longer be able to sponsor the married sons and daughters who are older than 30, or their brothers and sisters to immigrate. These relatives would need to go through a new merit system that would give them and other applicants points based on their relationship to the United States citizen, their work history, education, their English ability, their age, and other factors. Those applicants in the system with the most points would get green cards. So what's good about the bill is that it's comprehensive and it provides a direct path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. And it's the best DREAM Act we've ever seen. Again, it gives a fast track to the dreamers. So the timeline to pass this bill, the best estimates are about 2 months. The Senate vote could be as early as the first week of June, and then it goes to the House. So what is our work in Illinois? Our work is to move and to educate Senator Clerk to support comprehensive immigration reform to keep families together. I think that there's still a level of uncertainty as to his level of knowledge and support in this regard. I think it's also important to move and to educate Congressman Roscom, who is the highest ranking Republican in Illinois and number 3 in the House to support immigration reform. So the headline that I would leave you with at the end is that we in Illinois can make a difference on what happens on the national level to millions of individuals, the millions of Rosas who are across this country, who are working hard for our country, but who have to stand in the shadows, who are fearful every day that they won't be with their children. And so on Mother's Day, I ask the women in this room who are mothers either to sons or daughters or to agencies or to movements or to small businesses to get involved and play a role in what's happening here, because it's truly exciting, but it will only happen if all of us, irregardless of whether we're immigrants, children of immigrants, or grandchildren of immigrants, we can make this happen. And Illinois is a key state in this regard. And so with that, I'm going to ask Maria to come to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grace. I'm Maria Pesqueira, the President and CEO of Mujeres Latinas en Acción. Happy Mother's Day. Feliz Dia de las Madres. Real quickly, want to introduce to you someone who has been a champion of driver's licenses for the state of Illinois. She's been a champion for women's issues, and she has been a champion for immigrant voices in the state, specifically in the county. I'm speaking about Clerk of Cook County Courts, Dorothy Brown.
Good morning. I am so happy to be here this morning to lend my support to this such a very important issue, keeping families together. I am a mother. My daughter is 32 years old, and I really understand what the young lady was saying, what Rosa was saying earlier, how important it is to be able to be here with her children. I also feel that the state of Illinois needs to understand that this is also an economic issue. When you help legislators to understand that, and actually the United States, they really need to understand that this is an economic issue. When you send parents back and the children remain here and have to go into foster care, so you're talking about having to have children in a foster care system, and we all then have to make sure that we fund that system, then it's an economic issue. It also, of course, is a human issue. Just separating children from their parents and then having them be in environments that you really don't know where they may wind up. We have all heard the various stories, the horror stories about the foster care system and the kind of foster care parents that some children wind up with. Of course, there are a lot of great foster care parents as well, but you never know. And so I wanted to come here today to let you know that I am in full support of this so very important issue of keeping families together. And of course, Mother's Day is the best time for us to remember that. And I just want to say also, I appreciate supporting all of the issues that I've supported over the years for immigration reform. Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to see so many people here who are ready to work to get this thing across the finish line. I'm grateful to Grace for pointing out what it really is going to take. And I hope what we're doing today is arming you with the facts and the arguments that you need to really put pressure on our elected officials to get this to happen. So I'm just going to remind you of a few things that I bet you already know, but that are our best ammunition as we engage in this effort to get comprehensive immigration reform. Remember that women constitute more than half of America's undocumented immigrants. So they have a huge stake, and we all as women have a huge stake in bipartisan immigration overhaul. It's important to, I think, point out to people in this conversation that immigrant women are absolutely vital to our economy. They are part of the economic growth we need in this country. They're more likely to start businesses than their native-born counterparts. They now account for about 40% of all immigrant business owners. So we have to remember they are really creating that energy that we need to put people back to work. The majority of undocumented women are working. They are working, they are struggling to try and get more education, they are paying taxes, they are in fact paying plenty of taxes, but if we brought, it's worth remembering that if we brought undocumented residents into citizenship, the estimates from economists are that we would add 1.5 trillion to our economy over the next decade. So that's an enormous number, and when we know that that's the kind of engine of growth we're looking for and need in this country, we've got to talk about that with legislators. Back to the role that immigrant women play in the economy, we all know that immigrant women are very much core to the service economy. They are so vital to families because they are about half the nannies, housekeepers, and caregivers for the elderly in our country are undocumented. And if we tear their families apart, we're tearing our families apart. So we just have to get over the notion that there are undocumented immigrant women and then the rest of us. Our families are very, very intertwined, just like we're very intertwined in economic terms. I also don't have to say, as here we are on Mother's Day, that immigrant women are mothers, and Rosa made that vividly clear for us. They are working so hard to keep their families together. We all know, and Rosa knows more of them than I do, but we all know women who are working the graveyard shift in service. They are coming home, getting their kids ready to for school. They're going to English class, they're going to community college. I have no idea when they sleep, but they're tremendously hardworking and tremendously committed to the futures and to the success of their children. And that spirit that Rosa talked about, I think, has to animate our work on this issue. Women want to keep their families together. We have to stop this process of deporting parents and leaving children here. About 80% of the children of undocumented workers are citizens, and that, we have to deal with that. Women really need the clear path to residency and citizenship that this bill starts to provide. Obviously, we would all like it to be shorter, but we have to start here. We know we're going to have to be vigilant about the fact that lots of women have difficulty with proof of residence because of the sort of sporadic nature and off-the-books nature of their employment. We're going to have to watch out for that. But, at the bottom line here, that women as workers, women as mothers and caregivers for their own families and other families, and then this issue of safety that several others up here have talked about. Undocumented women are in the margins, they're in the shadows. That means domestic violence, sexual assault, exploitation at work, and other crimes against them are just not going to be resolved or even reported unless we can bring undocumented women out of the shadows and into the ability to exercise their full potential and their full rights as our sister citizens. So, and that also goes for them being able to further their education. They have to come out of the shadows to be able to do that. And I can tell you from Women Employed's work in community colleges around this state that some of the hardest working, most motivated students I've ever met are immigrant women who are doing 3 or 4 jobs, including caring for their own families, working very hard. So I feel like what we should do on this Mother's Day is commit ourselves. If we worked a tenth as hard as immigrant women do to fulfill all the roles they have to pass this bill, I think we can get it done. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Ann. So again, shine, women together. Next, I'd like to introduce to someone who also was very active, and sometimes we don't think that when we're talking about moving policy at various levels, the importance of all working together. So we're talking about a federal law, federal policy. And we are here at the local level. We know that we have folks that are doing a lot of work at this local level, but there have been folks at the local level also making sure that we had good policy in place locally. And so I'd like to introduce Commissioner Gaynor, who I've had the pleasure to work with as we were trying to pass the driver's license bill in the state of Illinois, but also as the work was being done in Cook County. Commissioner Gaynor.
Good morning, everyone, and again, happy Mother's Day. Rebecca, she, and all of us were involved, many people involved in the driver's license issue, and I'm just going to give one perspective that I think we found really helpful in actually pushing this initiative over the top, and it's the same type of thinking that we need to bring to national immigration reform. When we were first talking about driver's license, it was easy for us to talk about initially how could you imagine someone being so afraid that every time they drove their children to school that they could potentially not come home. All of the fear that would go around that who was going to take care of your children even if you are married. I don't think anyone would disagree with me that you would never want to be apart from your own kids. And so those were the arguments, the moral arguments that we were able to articulate. But the thing that made this initiative, I think, successful is that we had those moral arguments and we had the things that came from the heart, but we also talked and reached out to our allies in the business community, not just politics, and said, this is why you should care about immigration or about driver's licenses. And it's the same thing for immigration reform. We reached out to the healthcare sector and said, look, the entire, and Holy Cross Hospital especially was very, very helpful in this, but and MCHC, but everything's moving to electronic medical records. So if somebody doesn't have some sort of a number that's been assigned by a government and they come into your hospital, maybe they've been cared for before at Holy Cross and then they come into Mercy and you don't know that they're allergic to penicillin or have had a stroke. All of these things create liability for hospitals and don't actually allow hospitals to provide the type of care that they would like to provide. But if everybody has a number, whether it's an insurance number or this government-issued driver's license number that wouldn't be distinguishable to detail that they were maybe not a documented immigrant, that's going to actually help the hospitals and healthcare. Similarly, we went to the insurance industry and said, look, if people have driver's licenses, they're going to buy insurance because then they're going to be a legitimate driver. And think of all of the brokers and all of the towns and counties around the state. Now we're going to have a client base, to say nothing of the fact that there's a pool of money at the state that subsidizes people when they get hit by an uninsured driver. It makes everybody's rates go up. And so we're all ultimately better off. And so we made those arguments. And so I would challenge everyone today to say, look, we all know why this is the right thing to do, but we have to convince people who don't necessarily, come to that conclusion immediately that it's the smart thing to do. And so think about the industries that you're in, think about the friends that you have, the nonprofit boards that you might be on that would have somebody in one of those industries or others. And even if you said, look, I can't really figure out, maybe there's a connection, maybe there's not, but that's the type of thing that these guys who think about this stuff every day can help. And especially when we're targeting Senator Clerk, who's going to be responsive, I believe, to the business community as well as the rest of people in the state. But those are the arguments. A lot of times, and we found this in driver's licenses, people are just looking for a way to do what they kind of want to do anyway and just not get a whole bunch of hassle. And so if they can say, I had to vote for this because the businesses in my community said it was really going to be helpful. Great, maybe that's all they need to get by, because most people don't really think that our immigration system is working, and most people know that we want to do something in a more compassionate way, and they just need a reason to say why they did it. Because unfortunately or not, saying that they think it's morally the right thing to do is not enough. And so we just have to give them that plausible reason to say, this is why I did it. So it's up to us to think about those things to make their path to a yes vote easier. So, I think Rebecca, there's not a better organizer that I have ever met, and if anyone hasn't seen Cranes, she's brought out as people in their 20s who are going to be leading the city, and we're going to be very well off for that. But, you know, yes. But call her and call anyone else who was involved in the driver's license issue, because I really think for a lot of people that was the thing that pushed it over the edge. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to also bring attention to thanking the host committee. If in the agenda, in the back of the agenda, you will see a whole list of women, individuals who helped make this happen, and of course it was information. So a special thank you to all of you who helped get the word out and help us bring women together. Also want to acknowledge some of the folks that are in the room. We have Audra Wilson, who is the district director for Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Leslie Combs from Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. We've got Sandy Soto, the district director for Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth. Wendy Cohen and Natty Lasco from the Attorney General Lisa Madigan's office. Yancy Mendez with the Republican leader Tom Cross's office. So thank you for being here. And as I think about it, what are the next steps? But before I go into the next steps, I want to acknowledge something. The Lake Research Study showed that when women were approached who were not necessarily for comprehensive immigration reform by other women, and they heard about it from the compassionate perspective and heard about it as we heard today, that it is indeed a women's issue for equity. They were more likely to become advocates and allies for immigration reform. So as we think about the next steps and we think about the importance of the state of Illinois and the fact that this is really a historic gathering. We are the first in the nation of cities to host a gathering like this of women from different backgrounds and movements coming together to show the importance for us coming together to move a compassionate immigration reform bill. So you all here are part of something historic. We are part of a movement, and we can make it happen. So we heard today that we have some good parts of the bill, right? Some very good things, and we have some not so good things, some concerns, but we know that we have, by the way, interesting enough, the Gang of Eight, you all know that the Gang of Eight were all men, right? Right, they were all men. There was not one woman in that room, but fortunately we did have Senator Durbin, who does take into consideration the women's room, but there were still no women in that room, right? So I think we need to have the women's voices heard as we make sure that we have a good bill. So we have that opportunity here in Illinois. We need to reach out to Clerk, right? We need to make sure that the Senate vote, as it's happening quickly, we know, we just heard yesterday, it might be done as early as June, so we got to speed it up, ladies, and we can make it happen. Chicago, again, will be a leader in from the national perspective of what can be happen thanks to the work of women.